Hey there, welcome to the Insight Cafe. I'm your host, Nikan. And today, we have someone with us from all the way from Ireland. His name is Darragh Power. Hey, Darragh, welcome to the podcast.
A pleasure to be here, Nikan. Thank you so much.
So before we get started, I'm going to read you Dara's intro, and we're going to dive into a really special question today. And the question is, how do you know yourself? So first, let me tell you a little bit about my new friend, Dara. So Dara is a learner, a writer, a teacher, and a coach in his element, helping you be more in yours. For Dara, our shared humanity is served by understanding ourselves and others at the deepest levels, fostering connection, insight, and wisdom. Dara works with people, often leaders, to help them connect to themselves, to others, to have insights, and to make wise decisions for sustainable benefit and have a happier, more creative life. He likes to find the essence in ideas, and he shares sketch notes, which we're going to ask him about later, on LinkedIn at Darragh Power. So that's at DarraghPower. Feel free to say hello. So welcome again, Dara.
Thank you, Nikan. A pleasure to be here.
So as we were talking and I was reading your bio, something kept coming up for me, and it was understanding people at the deepest levels. And it and no matter how many times I read your bio, that was the thing that stuck with me. And the way it came about is so I typed it into YouTube to see what would come up. And what came up as the highest viewed video was, how do you know yourself? And I thought that would be the thing I'd want to talk to you about. I'd want to ask you about to get deeper insight into for everybody else. So would you be up for that?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Gosh, so
So,
first, yeah, where do we even begin? I wonder what comes up for me is, why is that question such a it's like a question that everybody wants to know the answer to. How do you know yourself? Like, what's on offer with that question?
and in some ways, the question could also be what's in the way of, or apparently in the way of knowing yourself?
Right.
Because on some level, everybody knows themselves. They're here
Mm,
and they know they're here. It's just very often we get sidetracked and our body is here and
yeah.
our breathing is here, but our mind is off elsewhere, making up stories. And a
Mm,
lot of the time, something I've been joking with lately is that, for many people after the COVID pandemic, their job was I type things into a computer and I go on Zoom or Teams calls.
yeah.
If you were to look at it objectively, that's what's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
But people make up all these stories about, well, I should be typing different things into this computer, or I should be on different calls with different people.
Mm,
And if I was on different calls with different people, then I would be a better self and have a better life.
right.
And this thinking process or this identification process with habits that we have in our minds
Mm,
is often in the way of us just being here, present, aware,
mm,
and knowing ourselves, which is in some ways the most natural thing in the world.
mm. I love what you said there about knowing yourself is the most natural thing in the world. And it's often the thing that a lot of people struggle with, right? And yet a lot of great philosophers point us in that direction. Even in Sun Tzu, Art of War, right? Where he talks about know yourself first, then know your enemy, and then you will win all battles. But if you know yourself and you don't know your enemy, then you will win or lose some. What Say more to that. What do you mean it's the most natural thing in the world?
So when we're talking about the deepest levels,
Yeah.
self-evident. So when you're a baby,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily know you're a self.
Mm.
you kind of there's an awareness present, but it doesn't know that it's there until it starts bumping into furniture and getting hungry and crying, and then somebody starts calling it a Nikon, 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 and then there's a whole load of thinking about it. But there's a life that's already there, and there's a livingness and a presence and an awareness that's already there, and we just develop all this thinking on top of that. So you know, if you were to ask somebody, "Do you know you're alive?" Everybody would be like, "Duh." You know, it's like, but there's the knowing that you're alive, and then there's the realization of just how profound and mysterious that is. You know, like Alan Watts was asked the question, what's the meaning of life? And he's like, it's to live. You know, the fact that we're alive and we're aware that we're alive and we can realize that is absolutely mind-boggling.
Mm. I'm thinking back in my own work now about how when people ask me or they request like, oh, I want to know myself because if I know myself, I feel like I'll be better. I'll be more able to navigate life. Like they want to know. I think the question comes from they want to know why under better understand their habits or their own thinking because they feel like I think they have a sense that if they understand it, they'll have an easier time. What do you make of that?
So one of the things I see or
Hmm.
I've seen in coaching is very often somebody will come with a problem in the outside world.
Hmm. Hmm.
My boss doesn't like me, or I'm in the wrong job, I need a promotion, or I wish I had more money, and behind that, a lot of the time sits a kind of a wish for a different feeling.
Hmm.
If I had this thing, then I would be happy.
Yeah.
If I had this job, I would be happy. If my boss was a different boss, I would be happy. If I had more money, I would be happy. And the thinking that I don't have this is creating a feeling in the moment of I don't have this and therefore I should be unhappy.
Hmm.
And that process of that's happening is an identification process that's very it's very simple and very natural. We all live in this world where, if I me plus something will be a better me. Me plus a different car will be a happier me, and then I have all this imagination of driving around with freedom, and you know, uh, look at my hair flowing in the wind as I drive down the road, and so then because I have this kind of imaginary thinking, and I look around and I don't have it at the moment, then I go, oh my God, like. I'm
Yeah.
miserable. Will I ever have it? And then I have all this fear about like, maybe I'm not worthy enough or I'm not good enough to have a car. And all the time, both the imagination of the car and the imagination of the worry and the imagination of the kind of like not being good enough is an imagination process that we don't see for what it is. We don't see it as like, we think it's us. We get stuck in
Hmm.
this process and we hypnotize ourselves with our own thinking.
I just realized that when most people ask that question is, how do I know myself? What they're really asking is, how do I work? How does my mind work? Because I want to understand why I'm sad about this or why I'm happy about this. Why do I get anxious about this? Because I want to have an easier experience of life. That's insightful to me.
Say more about that.
I think what occurs to me is when people ask, just really when people ask, like, how do I know myself? They want to know how they work because they have a sense that if they know how they work, they'll have an easier experience of life. And what you're saying is most of the things that are causing discomfort or emotional anxiety is coming from, or not most of it, all of it is coming from our thinking unrecognized as thinking, and it looks real in the moment. At least for me, I can share my experience of that. And I'm going to ask you the same question. Is for me as an athlete, right? As a former Taekwondo athlete, I used to be really occupied with my thinking because for some reason, I had this idea that if my thinking was a certain way where I always felt confident all the time, I should perform better. Like I just spent so much time trying to control my thoughts, and I thought if I could control my mind, I could manipulate the outcome. It turns out if you spend more time actually doing the sport, you'll get better at the sport rather than thinking about it in your bedroom. And I remember the day when I started learning about what we're talking about from Michael Neal, who wrote The Inside Out Revolution. I had this experience of not giving a shit of what I was thinking about and just being really present. And that was probably the most fun I ever had playing my sport because I was just so present. And I remember I was playing against a top seeded player at the National Olympics, and it was so much fun because it was just so present. I didn't win, but I still had a great time. And it's my really first times like just really enjoying playing. And I thought, gosh, I wish I knew this sooner. And in that way, I did get to know myself at a deeper level. It's like, oh, when I'm not so preoccupied with my thinking, there's something deeper that emerges. There's these deeper parts of myself, this of that felt like beyond me that I get to know and uncover. Hmm. So over to you. Like, how did you get to this knowing of yourself? Or what was it like for you?
So I would say, you could probably characterize me as a chronic overthinker for most of my life, to the point where I've done lots and lots of academic qualifications,
Hmm.
far more than average. And what I realized was that that was a compensation strategy.
Oh,
So in a way, it's like trying to measure the flow of water with a sieve, right?
yeah.
If the sieve works for flowers because it has lumps in it, and some of the lumps are going to get caught, so that the sieve will work. And my intellectual understanding was that like I kept trying to refine and get better ideas and better ideas and better ideas and ideas that were closer to what was real and what was true and personality theories and neurolinguistic programming and Jungian psychology and theoretical physics, and all of these things are completely fascinating as a way of using my thinking. And what was sitting behind that was a bit of a fear factor or an insecurity that, hey, I'm here in the world and it's kind of a scary place and I don't really understand it. So the more I know and understand, the more I could be assured of the outcome, shall we say. You know, so I could go into meetings, I could feel comfortable in meetings. If somebody mentioned a book, I would read the book before the next meeting so that I could turn up knowing, and then, of course, somebody else had mentioned another book, and then I'd have to go and read that one. And that process was both enjoyable and helpful, and then ultimately futile and exhausting. Um, and I was always interested in this kind of deeper dimension of what it means to be human and Zen and stuff like that, Zen Buddhism and everything. I was reading some of that stuff when I was about 15, and I had, I would say, what I would call now insights at various times going, this isn't working. But I didn't know what the missing link was, if you know, as Sydney Banks called it, the thought is a missing link. And I think there's been a series of insights I've had since then where, you know, I realized I was coaching people and I was really on the hook for the outcome. I really thought that whatever was going on in my head had a bearing on whatever the other person was getting out of the situation. And then whatever I was thinking about that after the fact, I was going, I'm not very good at this sometimes. And then I would ask the person, and they'd go, that was really helpful. So my thinking was at odds with what was going on. So then I realized actually how I think of myself as a coach is one level. It's just thinking. But there's other levels. And then when I started to really wonder about it with curiosity, I don't know how my heart beats or how blood flows around my body or how electrical impulses work in my brain, but that's all happening, you know. I don't know where thinking comes from or why it looks like it's real to me. And that's all happening too. And then I started to read all about these kind of spiritual teachings and interview lots of different people. And they all say the same thing, that our self is far beyond our ideas that we have of ourself. Um, and that self has an intelligence all of its own, um, which is far more reliable than trying to trust and or to trust than to try and control everything with a little sieve of your intellect. It's easier to kind of understand the nature of water and the flow of water than to try and, stop it with a sieve.
I just realized that an interesting problem from what you said is the question itself is how do you know yourself? And the word know, I would think, as I certainly did early on in my career, I would equate know with like an intellectual understanding. Like, how do I intellectually understand something? And the problem is what we're pointing to is beyond the intellect. It said in a different way. What was there before form, before a name, right? In Taoism, they would call it the unnaming of names. Like, who are you before a name? The
Yeah.
the pure energy of thing that you put self on, so to speak. And I would imagine that as gosh, what occurs to me is what I want to say is what I imagine is just even looking in this direction, how helpful it is. And you said earlier about the clients that would come with the problems of like in their thinking about how just even looking in this direction has seems to dissolve a lot of problems because it's like you see through it for what it is.
And even the question, right?
Right.
How do you know yourself?
Right. Who is the you,
Does,
right? Yeah, yeah.
right? It implies there's two yous.
Right. Oh, I didn't even see that one.
Yeah. When it's obvious that
Yeah.
there's a you here that knows,
Hmm.
you know? If you say, "Are you there?" Yes. Do you
Yeah.
know? Yes.
Yeah.
So the question of how do you
Hmm.
know yourself is kind of like creating a whole load of thinking that there's a me that doesn't know itself
Yeah.
and has to do all this work in order to find itself. And
Right.
and that the difference between an intellectual understanding is and a realization is when you see that with a different level of understanding or consciousness, the question looks ridiculous.
It does.
You know, it,
It
it looks
does.
like, how do you know yourself? It's kind of like, why would I even ask that question?
Yeah.
Because, it means that there's a me that doesn't know me, you know, but
Yeah.
it's our intellect really trying to struggle and put
Hmm.
a structure on something that it can't really fully understand, but we can intuit.
Hmm.
We can have an intuition about. And what I love about the Eastern world is that this intuitive process, in Thailand or in
Yeah.
India, there's a kind of a it's almost self-evident
Mm.
in the culture that, oh yeah, you know, like you just used Taoism there,
Yeah.
the unnaming of things,
Name.
and that's like that's everybody understands that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But in a world where how do we measure everything and how do we understand things and compare ideas and concepts together? That's a very intellectual pursuit.
Mm.
And the metaphor I sometimes use is like intellectual thinking's like chewing gum. It can be really nice and has a really nice flavor and it's enjoyable for a bit, but there's no nutrition in it.
Mm.
It's like it'll exercise your jaws.
Yeah.
You can have a pleasant experience doing it, but there's the real nutrition and the real nourishment
Yeah.
comes from also having this rich flavors that are full of like vitamins and goodness, you know?
Mm. It, what occurs to me when you say that is how, in a way, looking at it from this fresh perspective of even the question, right? How do you know yourself is to, yeah, you already do, I realized.
Hmm.
Because the fact that you are here, you already know that you are here. And what a and that's enough to know that. I remember I asked one mentor, Kathy Casey, and I was asking her the question, how do you know your true self? Like, how do I get there? I was in that part of my own journey, like how like some like I need to get there. How do I get there? And she said, when you stop looking, it comes to you. Like it's something that finds you. It's not the other way around. And I feel that's the premise I'd love to put a light on in this conversation is that it's not something outside of you. It's not something you have to go looking for. It's something that finds you if you settle down or if you just be still for a moment. Or even you don't even have to find it. It is you. It is
Yeah,
with you. Yeah.
that's it. There's no effort in being who you are already.
Right. Right.
There's no effort in being here.
Right. Yeah.
All the effort is in not being here. And like so many traditions all point in this way. And it sounds really simple and trite,
Mm,
but everybody
mm,
gets caught sometimes in illusion or the ideas that bring you out of the moment or out of yourself or that there's a deficiency here that needs to be fixed.
mm,
And in some ways, you have to function in the world in that way anyway, because you do need skills, you do need a
yeah,
roof over your head, you do need food. So those types of fixations are very natural and part of the overall process.
mm,
It's just that we um, get stuck in the habit of thinking about it and lose
mm,
sight of that all the worrying I'm doing right now is while I'm sitting here
mm.
and it's happening in my head, you
Yeah.
know. And it's not helpful when you point that out to me,
Mm,
because it's not that, you know, if you were to try and point out to somebody that it's their thinking, we don't take kindly to it in this. So if somebody said, let's say I was having a fight with one of my kids, if somebody said, "It's just your thinking, Dara," I'd go, "Well, it's not. There's all these things that they're doing that they need to
yeah,
not
yeah,
do,
yeah, yeah,
and there's all these things that they're not doing that they should be doing. And that's not just my thinking, that's real,
yeah.
you know. And I can wait for something cool to show up, but then later on, oh, I didn't really handle that very well.
Mm,
So to come back to um, your question in a way, which is, what's the point of understanding this or what's available,
mm,
is that the only time you can ever act is in the moment.
mm,
And the more you're in the moment without anything interfering with what you're seeing in the moment, without baggage or overthinking things, the more likely it is that you can see what makes sense to do
mm,
or how it makes sense to be,
mm,
um, or what being okay with not knowing.
Mm.
And that's a tough one because we're so used to, I have to figure all this stuff out.
Yeah.
And when I figure all this stuff out, then I can be the real me,
Right.
and it's all
Right.
on me, right? It's
To
I have
figure it
this
out. Yeah.
responsibility to to my children, to my wife, to my teammates in work to be this better person. And if I upgrade myself with all these books and do
Mm.
several courses, it doesn't occur to us that we're creating all that as a creative process.
Mm.
Because it doesn't look like it's a creative process. It looks like it's just a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. What occurred to me is that so in knowing yourself is actually to enjoy being you in the truest form of just simply being
Hmm.
and knowing that it's taken care of in a sense. Or at least that's what it looks like to me. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a nice feeling that goes along with that, like
Yeah. Yeah.
around acceptance.
Mm.
And a lot of people, one kind of wisdom tradition points out that every judgment is a rejection of what is,
Right.
right? So every time I judge myself, I'm rejecting myself.
Mm.
And every time I judge what's going on around me, I'm rejecting that and saying reality should be different than what it is.
Mm.
And if I keep thinking reality should be different from what it is, then I have to run in and fix it all the time.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So there's a compulsion on us as long as we are identified with a judgment or thinking
Mm.
that reality or I should be different from what it is. It doesn't look like a good idea to stop and to
Mm.
see, well, is this true? Or
Mm.
is this a judgment that I'm making? Or it's like, not now, I'm busy.
Mm. Now I'm busy. I'm busy
You
solving.
know,
Yeah.
I have too many things to do to start looking at these judgments, you know. But the freedom that comes with seeing that maybe it is a good idea to do it, maybe it's not.
Yeah.
What the real benefit is this feeling of I'm okay.
Mm.
It's reality. I can accept where it is. I can accept myself as I am.
Mm.
And because I'm accepting those things, all sorts of opportunities and possibilities appear. This is why in Zen they say, in the experts' minds there's no possibilities, and in the beginners there's infinite possibilities.
Whoa. In the expert mind, there is no possibility. In the
Or
beginner's mind,
limited.
yeah.
Yeah, there's
Ah, okay.
infinite.
I got it. I see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I
That
know. Yeah.
yeah.
But in the beginner's mind, it's I believe the Japanese word is shoshin, the beginner's mind of
Hmm.
just constantly showing up fresh. But something that you talk about, and we're going to pivot to a different part of this conversation. I guess I'm going to go back to the original question, but how do you know yourself? And inspired by you, it's a good feeling and a sense of curiosity. That's probably a
Hmm.
good place to start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the sense of curiosity is I don't know.
Right.
There is an I here, but it doesn't know very much,
Mm.
you know? And
Right.
and and then it's the learning potential is massive. And you only have to look at children,
Right.
you know. Children don't go, I read in a book once that you don't walk until you're 18 months old. Therefore, I'm going to sit here and wait until I'm 18 months old before I
Yeah.
try. They just try.
Mm.
They move with the impulse that's going on for them and they fall over, they get up, and they're not overthinking it all. They're
Mm.
in life, um, not checking in on how am I doing in life or what's my condition in life. So there's a
Yeah.
freedom that comes with it.
So really, if you're listening to this, that's one thing I'd want to give you as a result of listening to this conversation till now is the freedom from that question is how do you know yourself is simply a good feeling and a sense of curiosity. There's one
and take the pressure off knowing yourself,
right.
or make that question what it
Productive.
is, which
Yeah.
is an illusion that you're different from yourself,
Mm.
you know, because you are yourself already. And you can make up
Yeah.
all these stories about, you know, what
Yeah.
this self should be different.
Yeah.
But it's good to kind of go, I have no idea, like really what like there's an awareness here and an aliveness here, but I don't have no idea what my potential is. A phrase I really like from Milton Erickson, who is from a
Mm.
different tradition, master of change. He's and a hypnotist. He had a great expression, which is, nobody knows your potential, not even you.
Mm.
And going along with this curiosity is a lot of potential.
Yeah. What a wonderful shift. There's something else too that we've been touching on in this conversation that I'd like to talk more about, which is this in talking to you, there's this sense of lightness. There's this fun, play, and light experience. And I'd love for you to talk more about how that doesn't get enough credit. The value that fun, play, and light experiences can bring to our own world. Because I feel like oftentimes the world feels very serious, and it feels like I have to take myself very seriously in order to do well in the world. And I know that you have a different perspective.
And you could look at it like I used to in training programs, Oscar Wilde had an expression which is,
Yeah.
some cause happiness wherever they go, and others cause happiness whenever they go.
Mm.
So the quality of being that you have when you show up somewhere is will create a feeling with people, or a rapport,
Mm.
or uh, perception. And
Yeah.
because our Western world has traditionally valued profound intellects.
Mm, mm,
You
mm,
know, my body is merely a vehicle for my profound head
mm.
to be conveyed from one meeting to the next,
Yeah.
during which I will give you the profound kind of thinking that I've had having read millions and millions of books,
Yeah.
right? This is the take me seriously because I know a lot,
Yeah.
right? And there's a real payoff for that is there's a sense of self-importance and a kind of a hierarchy of this is how I'm different from you, other human. I'm quite serious, and you will take me seriously for that reason. Um, and that self-importance and uh, the weight of that, you don't see children in a playground going, well, let's all just be very deferential to him because he's read 3 pages ahead of us in the book.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not really a natural state for humans. Um, Equally, if you look and you go, what are reasons for hope or humor or fun in the world? You'd say there's none. There's so many problems in politics and corruption and
Mm.
macroeconomics and economic uncertainty. And, the more I think about all that stuff, the more I take that seriously, and the more I become an expert on that stuff,
Mm.
the more seriously I take myself, and then the more seriously I take myself, the more I have this thinking about myself and how important I am in changing this system is a very um, tempting in Eastern philosophy they would call it Maya,
Mm.
is the play or the illusion, right? And while I'm sitting here thinking about changing the world and the geopolitical climate of the world, my dog walks into the room and I ignore it, you
Right.
know. And then the sense of humor comes from seeing that, okay, I've made myself terribly important again, but my dog is just looking at me going, like, dude, hello. Yeah. So this kind of the humor and fun and lightness is a very connecting experience for humans.
Mm.
And if you look in every human society since the dawn of time, there's been music, there's been culture, there's been laughter.
Right.
It's a quintessentially human thing. It's just the way that that perception is valued. Like everybody loves Robin Williams because he makes loads of people laugh,
Yeah.
you know, like universally loved. So they like to have a figurehead that can do it. But if you ask somebody, when was the last time you laughed in a meeting? And is it okay to laugh in a meeting? Is it okay to have fun in work? Like when I walk in here, is it okay? And
Mm.
y- where I look at it is that it's one way of seeing how healthy um, a culture is. You know, um,
Mm.
Don Donovan, who I don't know if you know,
Yeah.
he we were talking about it, and he was very generous in sharing his experience of working in the corporate world with this understanding,
Mm.
with a principles understanding, is that the culture of a company is the average of the states of mind of the people in it,
Mm. Yeah.
right? Which I think is a very dynamic way of understanding
Mm.
human engagements. So if we're all thinking about problems very seriously all the time and very important about those problems, then that place will become a culture of problems and with very serious people in it.
Mm.
And every now and then there might be an injection of humor, but a more balanced culture would be one where there's a lightness, there's a fun, there's a hope, there's an optimism, and that's created inside out too.
Mm.
So if I realize I'm taking myself too seriously, I'm taking the problem too seriously, then I might have a laugh at my own expense or go for a walk or lighten up a little bit. And you see all these stories about, because I know you work with founders
Mm.
of companies, it's very rarely that like I was on line 8,760, cell A27, in an Excel spreadsheet when I had this breakthrough idea that caused my business to explode, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was out for a walk, I was in the shower, I drew it on the back of a napkin in a bar, so this state of mind of lightness and hope and optimism is very human. And if we overvalue one versus the other, or it becomes unacceptable in certain environments to be one or the other, then it's really diminishing human potential.
Mm.
And human potential is what drives all sorts of performance. So I see humor and fun as an integral part of everybody. And everybody who doesn't want to be hopeful or optimistic or have a little bit of fun. Everybody wants it in some way. It's just that we don't see our creative potential to do it. We wait for an ideal circumstance, or we put on a Robin Williams video and we laugh and we go, ha 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 ha, isn't he brilliant? I
Yeah.
could never do that, you know? And it's not that you have to be Robin Williams, but it's like to have to honor the good feelings as well as the profound and weighty ones.
Mm. I wonder if I wonder if Robin knew just how impactful his work was because that was what he was spreading was lightness. And is lightness and curiosity because like you never know what you're going to get with Robin, right? And lightness and curiosity is really the keys to the door we've all been looking for, which was insight, clarity, a better feeling place. Mm. I don't forget
And
who said it, right? Like he said he wondered if heaven has jokes, and if heaven didn't have jokes, he didn't want to go.
yeah,
Or something like
and
that. Yeah.
but you see, there's this profundity
Yeah.
to him as a person as well. Like, I didn't know him,
Yeah.
yet we can have a conversation because in some way he touched me,
Right.
and in
And
some
me,
way he
right?
touched
Like,
you, right?
yeah, right. Yeah.
And you look at that and you compare that to like thought leader on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
A self-titled thought leader. Here I am. I'm a thought leader, you know, and that is kind of, in a way, uh, an aspiration. I
Mm,
would love to be a thought leader, and I would love you to think of me as a thought leader. Um, but I don't think Robin Williams worried too much about a thought leader. He just created a feeling in the room with other people.
yeah.
And if they left the room with a changed feeling or a
Mm,
changed state of being, then he'd done his job. And that was enough for those people to say, oh, you have to go see this other person.
yeah. Yeah.
He's really interesting. So there's a kind of a real
Mm,
rapport and connection that can spread beyond a room or beyond a conversation that is not very linear, it's
mm,
not measurable, it's not rational. But
mm,
the way the nearest proxy I have to it is I don't like the word branding,
mm,
right? I like reputation, and reputation is what people say about you when you're not in the room.
mm,
And you can't control that,
mm,
right? Nobody can control that. But how I show up to work with people, if has an authenticity and a lightness and a curiosity and a presence about it, and then when I leave the room, they're left with that feeling and that rapport, and I've been helpful or in service in some way, then I don't have to worry about anything else
mm,
because that's, and it won't be for everybody. Some people will look and they go, I don't like this guy,
mm,
you know, but that's really not my problem. So when I work with people in a coaching kind of context, is that, you know, if your reputation, if what people are saying about you when you're not in the room is you're a good person, you're good fun, you know something, you're helpful, then the more that happens, the easier your life will be.
mm, mm. You know, I love all of that. I think I hope the people listening to this can feel as I do this like the lightness that we've created in this conversation and how it just flows. And there's something that you also speak about that you haven't spoken about yet, but we've touched on it. Is one of the things that you're known for in your work is creating insights with your clients, whether it's leaders or or athletes, and helping them to get insights to help them see life from a higher perspective that makes their life easier. And one of the challenges that I think a lot of people are facing in the world is that sometimes it feels like the world is moving quite fast or moving too fast. And it feels like a struggle to keep up because our thinking is going so fast that we're struggling to keep up. And we're trying to keep up with how fast AI is changing and what that means for us and models of knowledge and learning. And one of the things you talk about how is one of the things that won't change is how insight is needed. And I'd love for you to speak more to that.
So the first thing is to honor how people show up,
Mm.
right? Because insight's working regardless of what my opinion is about it, right?
Say more to that.
So if you, and I've done this hundreds of times, you work with a group of people and you go, hands up who's had an insight in their life. And everybody has. And isn't that amazing? Almost like it's a universal human capacity. Because to me it is. Every time I've asked that question, have you had an insight? People will say yes. So it's built in to the human operating system that we have a capacity for insight, which is on one level a fresh thought, on another level it's seeing beyond the self that you think you are. On another level, it could be just waking up out of not being in the moment to being present in the moment and seeing, thinking. There's all these different ways that we talk about insights, but when you look at it as a universal human experience, It's not necessarily magical. It's not out there. It's not like theoretical or abstract. If you look for evidence from like, and you just ask, tell me about a time you had an insight, people will always have one. Um, and sometimes it's been when they've been sped up. Sometimes it's been when they've been slowed down. Sometimes it's been, you know, I was in the middle of a shopping center, and then I realized, oh, I have to move town. I don't know where it came out of, but I just knew that I had to move out of this town. And you're like, well, where does that come from? I don't know. Did it look like an obvious idea? Yeah, I mean, it was so self-evident that I had to do it. You know, what in the, SWOT analysis that you done on your Excel spreadsheet said that this stacked up? Oh, that came later.
Mm.
I had the insight first, and then I had to explain to my intellect a little bit why it was a good idea, just to reassure myself. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
so the capacity is there, and you don't have to give anybody insight. You can't. But when you point out the capacity that they already have,
mm,
that they've already been using, that's already probably led to the most powerful changes they've experienced in their life. Falling in love, moving town, deciding to do one program, changing job. And, there's all this language out there like, you know when you know,
yeah, yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And everybody goes, oh yeah, yeah. But if you look at what the experience behind the form of that language is pointing to is that it's back to the, you know, how do you know yourself? Is that you know when you know. It's just we've become very prone to overthinking and to try and explain knowing what we know
Mm.
rather than maybe to reassure ourselves that if we do follow through on this, we're not crazy, whatever the idea is, you know?
Gosh, I just saw something that made me giggle as you were talking. I For context, I know a photographer in Thailand, and he's a pilot, and he was at an air show taking pictures of the new Raptor, like by the U.S. is a fighter jet. I think it was a Raptor F-35. I'm saying it wrong, but America's latest and greatest stealth fighter. And something occurred to me to Google when was the first airplane invented, and it was like nine, like early late 1800s or like early 1900s, like 1905, like early. And I thought, like from that short amount of time, we went from this like this, if you look at the first plane, to like this, like F-22 Raptor. And I thought, holy shit, humans are great. And I realized as you were talking, there's something in that did not change, which is our ability to insight. It didn't improve. It didn't like we didn't get a software version 2.0 of the ability to get insights. Like our ability to get insights never changed. But what we were able to do and create with insights completely changed our world and our species. And I
And
thought,
and we've
yeah,
yeah,
it's the universal thing. Like insights are universal.
right. That's how I see it.
Right. And what's blowing my mind right now is how perfect it is. I think as humans, we have this premise that we want to make it better. And it's like a double-edged sword, right? I want to make the world better, but I also want to make this better. I want to make myself better because this is a piece of shit and I need to have better habits. I need to fill in the blank. But to know that walk like within all of us, we have something that's so perfectly designed and made that will never change, regardless of how much technology changes or the world changes. Like insights, our ability to get insights doesn't change. Like how
And
cool is that?
it's amazing.
Yeah.
And what's amazing, another way of describing universal is impersonal.
Impersonal. I love that word, right?
Be-
Impersonal, my new favorite
yeah,
word.
because what we have a tendency to do. because of our identifications is really, really, really like our own insights. And
Yeah.
I include me on this. I saw something about this recently where I had some insights and I really thought, wow, these are amazing.
Mhm.
And I was so into the individual insight, like the nature of consciousness. It's like gravity,
Oh, yeah.
that I was like, that I didn't realize that I was making a big deal out of it.
Yeah. It
Instead of seeing that how just everybody's having insights like
yeah.
all the time,
Yeah.
and some of them will feel really great and others won't.
Yeah. I have a bad joke from the great Don Rickles. He would say, Dara has great insights. Just ask him, he'll tell you.
Yeah, yeah.
Just ask him, he'll tell you. I'm a great insight guy.
It's
Yeah,
so
but it's a habit that we just like, oh, my insights are better than yours. Like, but it's coming from we both drawn from the same source. That's
one of the
impersonal.
totally one of the stories that landed this for me was I had Chip Chipman so
Yeah,
as a mentor, and
right.
Chip passed away. He was an amazing, lovely man. So my thoughts to his family. And
Yeah,
but when he told me this story where he had an insight one day, it was a really profound one, and he was really blown away by it. And he turned up to Sydney Banks' house to tell him.
yeah.
And Sydney Banks was mowing his lawn, and he just turned the lawnmower off, and he went, "Shh." And they went for a walk for about half an hour, looped back, and he turned on the lawnmower again. He said, Chip said, that was my favorite memory of been with Sid. And I think what I took from that was that understanding that this we have this capacity for insight built in. It's very helpful, it's very reliable, it's very ordinary, it's not out there. Everybody has it, whether they've got an explanation for it or not. You're going to have insights all the time. Value it, really value it, and don't make yourself really important or make the insights really important. Stay looking at the nature of the system, at the nature, the impersonal, the being present in the moment, which is also true self. And like you said, lightness and curiosity are your friend, you know?
I love how we've come full circle, Dara. To
Yeah,
how do you know yourself? Lightness, a good feeling, lightness, curiosity, and the insight will come to you in whatever
yeah.
direction you're looking for.
And a willingness not to not know, to
A
be in the
willingness not to
unknown.
know. It's the
Yeah.
unknown.
And then that's very fertile ground for an insight to uh, have more potential to show up.
I that's one of my story about that is I remember was watching a coaching session by Jack Pransky and a lady from Mexico. And Jack Pransky, for context, is one of the early teachers of the principles because learning from Sydney Banks. And I remember I asked him, like, how do you know what to say? Or how do you know what to say to this lady that made such an impact? And he said, I don't know anything. And I remember the thought that went through my head of like, because Jack Pransky is like what, like 75 or like late 70s. And I thought, if this guy doesn't know anything, I definitely don't know shit. And it was kind of like it was like a relief. I was like, oh, I don't need to know anything. This is great.
Yeah, it's
And
very
then I
liberating.
got curious. I was like, wait, but then like my ego, like, wait, but we need to know. But that's our value. And then for the first time in my life, I was like, no, I think this old guy's up. I think that guy knows what he's doing, but he doesn't know. So like there's something to be curious about. And that curiosity led to so much depth and beauty and realization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that was a lovely way to finish, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, before we go, if you were to give, I ask everybody this, if you were to give people a gift, a knowing, a quote, or something they could put in their back pocket to keep handy, what would you give them?
I would, in a way, this is going to sound a bit weird, is like give up trying stuff. I give up. Try, try, trying to
Thanks,
fix
Dara.
yourself.
Highly informative.
But give up trying to fix yourself. That like to start to, if you can have some level of acceptance of yourself, that's totally game changing, you know. Uh,
Yeah.
and to see that it's everybody has a resistance to doing that, you know. We all think we would be better with X, Y, or Z. But if even if they could just be curious enough to go, why is the unacceptance here? You know, like I know myself, you know, what more do I need?
Mm.
So I guess it's more to get curious about there's something deeper in all of us that we can't understand, that we don't know. But if we're curious that it's there and we can accept that it's there, then there's a huge potential hidden in that.
Mm.
Uh, and there's nothing you have to do to get it. It's a not doing or a seeing, you know,
Yeah.
uh,
Cool.
which is still a verb, which I don't like, but
Well,
a
another
recognition.
conversation, another session. So next up, where can we hang out with you if we want to get in
So
touch? Yeah.
mostly I share sketch notes on LinkedIn,
Okay.
Darragh Power. That's probably the easiest way. I'm also on Instagram, Darragh Power Draws, but I'm on that a lot less.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, I'd be always curious to see what landed for people and
Sure.
if it was helpful at all. So,
Yeah, if it was, love to hear your insights. Please comment in the comment section or wherever you happen to see this. And thanks for listening and coming on this exploration with myself and Dara. It's been so much fun and such a privilege.
and thank you, Nikon. I really
Mm.
appreciate being asked. It's very generous of you.
All right. So until next time, we'll see you later. All right. Bye.
Bye bye.